Welcome back, gang. It's Deltia from Deltiasgaming.com, and in this video, we're going to cover a detailed walkthrough of endgame PvE Magicka Warden DPS. I'm going to walk you through my build step by step, giving you the why to using skills, gear, champion points, and flexibility in all the areas. I'm also going to take time to show you my rotation and weaving using my webcam, so you'll see on PC exactly how these skills flow together. You'll want to watch this video if you're curious about the Magicka Warden class and how to make it work at endgame. Also, make sure to check out my written build with link in the description below. This way, if something changes or gets patched in the future, I can change them instantly. And if you like this type of content, make sure to click that like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Let's talk about some core Magden mechanics. After coming back and playing the Magden PvE, I had to relearn some of the basic mechanics with the class, and it mainly has to do with the passives. I constantly tell people to read and understand their class passives because it's the why ingredient to slotting and using skills. For instance, the passive Bond with Nature from Animal Companion Tree. Anytime one of your companion skills ends, you heal for 1260 health. This is super useful to know because you have a zero magic cost ability that you can spam cast for healing called Blue Betty Netch. It gives around 1 to 2,000 heals, but you guessed it, it costs literally nothing. Now we will look at Flourish passive in the same skill line, Animal Companion. Increase your magic and stamina recovery by 12% if an Animal Abandon ability is slotted. With massive recovery just for slotting skills, this gives us an incredible incentive to have at least one Animal Companion ability on both bars. And one of the most important passives, especially for PvE DPS wardens out there, is the Advanced Species passive. Increase your damage done by 2% for each Animal Companion ability slotted. This passive gives a warden an enormous advantage in slotting as many skills from that skill line on the front bar as possible. Not to mention, Warden has great AoE, range, single target, and some buffs within their class kit, making them one of the strongest. Moving to the Winter's Embrace tree, you have the skill Winter's Revenge that has a unique ability to apply the Chilled status effect more frequently. Chilled status effect applies minor maim for 4 seconds, reducing the target's damage done, while wielding a Frost Staff also applies minor brittle for 4 seconds, increasing the critical damage done. This is the common reason why Warden healers and tanks use a Frost Staff on their back bar for that minor brittle, resulting in 10% critical damage increase. Speaking of critical damage, there is a cap now of 125%, so fully buffed, you're going to want to make sure you have enough room for brittle, which is 10%, and 20% for major force via Warhorn, but with our gear and skill loadouts, that should not be a problem. In summary, Animal Companion skills equal damage. Slotting Animal Companion skills equals recovery, and you have a much more likelihood to apply the Chilled status effect using that damage over time. The cons are this. The rotation can be a bit difficult with Deep Fissure because it's your go-to ability once every 3 seconds, meaning you'll have to constantly cast this and requiring more bar swaps in management of this skill for optimal DPS. You're also reliant on your pet for your ultimate optimal damage-wise, both in terms for slotting it passively and then single target. It is amazing. Sometimes Destro Ult or Dawnbreaker can be used, but when in doubt, the output from Eternal Guardian is enormous. Now that you have some of the core mechanics down, let's talk about gear and then walk through the skills and the rotation. Now that we talk about gear, I'm going to start with the optimal setup and then work my way giving you flexible options, whether it's crafting, overland, dungeons, and so on. As a Magden, your primary weapon choice will be fire on both bars. Do the passive that increases your single target damage and light attack weaving capabilities. Plus, unstable fire damage will give us massive benefit on your back bar and will proc our weapon enchant, which we'll get to a little bit later. I prefer not to run mythics unless I'm playing solo in this current patch because the monster helms can now critically strike, keeping them on par with mythics. And so the old setup, 5 body, 5 front bar with a monster helm and a back bar weapon is my go-to for the majority of the content that I play. Speaking of monster helms, let's talk about the single target heavy hitter Kelnar's Nightmare obtained in Veteran Unhallowed Grave DLC Horrorstorm. The 2-piece, damaging an enemy with a light attack, puts a bone stack on them for 5 seconds, up to once every half second. At 5 stacks, an undodgeable skeleton hand attacks your enemy after 1 second, knocking them into the air and stunning them for 3 seconds, or dealing magic damage if they cannot be stunned. So why is this useful? Well, single target, it's absolutely massive damage because most bosses cannot be stunned anyway. So it goes to the damage dealing component of this monster helm. The downside of this monster helm is it's primarily single target. So if you're facing ads and you get them to pop the Kelnars on them, it's just going to stun them, not resulting in any damage. It's probably the most single target producing damage 2-piece monster helm that you have out there, just not effective in AoE fights. This is what I use in like Black Rose Prison or a trial or something, where the majority of the hardest content is a single target boss fight. So let's talk about some flexible options if you want something else. And one would be Narayanath from Crypt of Hearts 2. This monster helm is going to be able to proc a Lich Crystal that explodes after 2 seconds and does 4-meter AoE damage. This is really nice in both single target and AoE, and my go-to alternative set that I use when I don't have just a single target heavy boss fight. Plus, it's very easy to get a hold of in Crypt of Hearts 2. Next up is Iceheart, a really good defensive alternative. When you deal critical damage, you have a 20% chance to gain a damage shield that absorbs damage for 6 seconds, and while the damage shield holds, it's going to deal frost damage to enemies within a 5-meter radius. This is great if you're playing solo or you're doing a trial or a dungeon that has a lot of mechanics, a lot of damage heavy mechanics, especially with melee, because that frost damage is actually going to add up, since it's in a 5-meter radius, and it can proc so frequently, giving you a shield when you really need it. Now, if you don't want to run the monster helm route, what folks commonly do is swap something like Harpooner's Kilt on their leg piece, and then also 1-piece Slime Crawl on the helm for a little bit of extra critical. So Harpooner's Kilt is one mythic option, or you could run Death Dealer's Fate on your jewelry piece and then just put one of your 5-piece front bar sets on your body. And that's kind of the mythic loadout that you go with if you want to go that route. Now let's talk about the 5-piece body set that we're going to keep on our body at all times. Typically, you want this to be a trial set, so you gain Minor Slayer at all times, increasing your damage done to dungeon trials and arena mobs by 5%, essentially all PvE mobs. What's considered best in slot currently is Perfected Bahase's Mania. This is obtained in Veteran Rockgrove Trial Blackwood Chapter. The upside of it is you're going to increase your damage done to non-player enemies by up to 15% based on your missing magic with the 5-piece. So if you can get your sustain to bounce between about 20 and 50% Magicka, you'll have a flat damage increase, giving you massive damage that stacks on Minor Berserk, Major Berserk, and other amps. The downside is this: it's hard to actually manage that, finding the right combination of food, gear, weights, and traits on your weapons and everything, and this is not exactly new player friendly. Especially if you're playing doing pug dungeons one day, doing coordinated trials the next. Different healers and tanks will be running vastly different setups. So you might run out of magic way too frequently on one day, and then when you're playing your coordinated group, it might be you have all the magic in the world and you're not taking advantage of this set. Keep in mind though, if you are able to manage this right around 20-25%, the damage is absolutely enormous. So some flexible options for you. Perfected Mantle of Sorority obtained via Cloud Rest. This is going to give you a lot of spell damage for stationary long trials fights. I typically do not use this set because it's very specific to trials and dungeons that do not require mobility, but it's also another really good option for trial set. Another trials option, and what I highly recommend for folks that are able to get a hold of this, is Perfected False Gods via Sunspire. It's great for players that don't want to manage and babysit their resources with Bahases. You get great survivability and mobility when things die, and even 8% reduction cost in magic is just great for the average player. Yes, it's less damage, but it's way less babysitting too. And if you can't get that, Mother Sorrow is a great option. It's an overland set from Deshawn. It works very well due to the massive amount of crit rating you receive. Plus, in light armor, it's a perfect starter set for you that you can obtain day one as farming the gear in Deshawn or buying it on traders with gold for dirt cheap. Another option I wouldn't sleep on is Withered Hand. It's an overland set in Alakir. This is a set that I love because it's a non-trial sustain set. So think of False God, a lesser version, but it also does heal you when enemies die. In fact, this is what I used when I started over on PCU with less than 200 champion points, and I obtained 5-piece set for less than 40,000 gold and cleared VMA and Batashram trifectas. A craftable option for folks is Law of Julianos in Rothgar. This is 6 trait, and it's going to give you a well-balanced stat line of spell critical and spell damage, and it's a great starter set if you don't have any other options. Now we're going to get to the 5-piece front bar set. So Kinra's Wrath is considered the best in slot. This is obtained in Black Drake Villa Flames of Ambition DLC. It's been hybridized now and was a medium armor set, but you're going to get weapon and spell damage along with critical chance in the 5-piece. Dealing damage with light or heavy attack grants you a stack of Burning Heart for 5 seconds up to 5 stacks. At 5 stacks, you grant an Aura of Wrath, giving you Major Berserk, increasing your damage done by 10%, and allies around you within 12 meters are going to create Minor Berserk, increasing their damage done by 5%. Essentially, this is an amazing set if you can manage 5 light or heavy attacks within a short window. Keep in mind, if you struggle with light attack weaving, you will not see the benefit of this at all. And when playing my Magden build specifically, I pretty much put a lot of my abilities on the front that I need to cast and about only 2 ground effect AoEs on my back bar. The reason is if I had 3 buffs that I had to maintain on my back bar, I was not reliably able to keep this up, especially if I was light attack weaving on my back bar. Why this is relevant for you to know is a global cooldown takes roughly a second. So if you have 1 second on your back bar along with a light attack weave and a bar swap animation, you can't really do beyond 3 global cooldowns reliably to get back to your front bar to hit another light attack. Why I share this with you is you need to be honest with yourself. Are you very, very good at light attack weaving and maintaining this? You can find this out in your combat metrics and see what the uptime is. If you are, this is a great front bar set. If you're not, there's alternatives that you might want to go to that will be easier and simpler. Yes, it'll be less damage, but you'll be able to pull it off. And the first flexible set up is Medusa's from Arx Coridium. This is the previous meta set and is still good because you gain minor force on your front bar and good critical chance rating. Moreover, you do not need to constantly focus on light attack weaving or take advantage of this set. So if you're someone that misses light attacks like me, or you want something simpler and you want to get to your back bar to maybe heal yourself or take your time a little bit and you don't want to be flustered and coming back and doing 37 bar swaps frequently, seriously consider Medusa. Yes, it's less damage, but I'd rather have the uptime on my front bar when I need it versus trying to babysit those light attacks if you cannot pull it off. Keep in mind, I still do use Kinra's because I set my bar up a specific way to make it work. Another alternative, a little bit better than Medusa's, still in the same vein of the light attack weaving, is Cogman's Vein from Frostfall. This is easier to manage because the stacks are based on critical damage. If you have a high crit rating and do well with bar swapping, this is a great alternative because it's going to give you the same buff that Medusa's does, minor force, but it's going to give you a lot more crit chance. And then lastly, an overland set that you can use is War Maiden from Varnfeld. It's not a bad option as a starter set because it gives you a massive amount of spell damage and you can get it merely just on your front bar. And then if you don't have access to those, you can go with what we talked about earlier, Mother's Sorrow or Laws of Julianos. And then the back bar set, we're going to go with Perfected Crushing Wall, Veteran Maelstrom Marina, and Ursinian. This is going to increase our light and heavy attack damage significantly when my Wall of Elements is up. Simply put, you're going to have unstable wall running on your back bar at all times, and that's what you're going to switch to your back bar, your primary dot that you're going to focus on because of this set. Your light attacks are fundamental to your overall damage, and light attack weaving can result in one of your top damage sources. And in fact, some of the best players on the planet, their #1 damage source is light attack weaving, just in between each and every ability. So don't sleep on this set. An alternative for you, if you don't have access to this or you're just starting out, is actually Willpower. You can get this from Imperial City, the Dungeon Fighters, and the Traders. It's dirt cheap. The reason why is the 2-piece just gives us max magic on our back bar, a lot of max magic. So what's nice is if you have a shield on your back bar that scales in effectiveness based off of max magic, you put Willpower back there and you get a bigger shield. Not a bad option for a starter. So let's take a look at some gear charts. And first gear chart up is a beginner magic DPS gear chart. This is kind of what I used as a brand new player on PCE, sub 200 champion points. The first thing I did is I went and bought Mother's Sorrow from the Traders. I had about 100,000 gold. I got that, and the traits you want to be divines all the way with max magic glyphs. When you're just starting out, if you don't have a lot of gold or resources, don't worry about the traits so much. The 5-piece set is really the most important. Next up, I went and got Withered Hand from Alakir, also on the Traders, and I did 2 spell power, 1 magic recovery, seemed to be the sweet spot. Now you have a couple options. The weapon choices I went with previously were trainee. The reason why is it gives you a lot of max stats, more than willpower, because it's going to give you health and magic. But the downside is it only comes in the training trait. So to be optimal, you're going to have to retrade it and transmute it. If you don't have transmute stones, go with the willpower. It's going to give you over 1700 max magic and is a great starter set, though your health is going to be a bit low. So you might have to weigh your food options or your attributes so you don't die frequently. Next up is our solo gear set. And so this is what I run for running VMA, Vatashram Hollows, if I want to just flex and complete a veteran dungeon by myself. The 5 pieces that I use: Perfected False Gods. This is great resource sustain. We talked about it. It's incredible solo, and you get 8% magic cost reduction. It's in a trial. Now, you can also go with Withered Hand if you don't have this set. And then I go with Medusas on my front bar. So Medusas is going to be very simple, and that way it's going to save me a skill on my back bar, so I have a little bit more flexibility in the skill choices. A lot of folks run Channeled Acceleration or Barb Trap, and that's useful, but when you're playing solo, having that extra gear slot for off heal, for elemental drain, for resources, for something is vital. So I put Medusas on the front bar, and then I have Perfected Maelstrom on the back bar. And that leaves one slot for my ring, which is one of 2 options for mythic choices: Pale Order or Death Dealer's Fate. The too long didn't read here is Pale Order basically carries your survivability and is just absolutely incredible for new players. However, if your survivability is good and you can bar swap, get shield, use your Netch for healing, Death Dealer's Fate is going to give you 2,680 stats across the board. That's health, magic, and stamina once you've been in combat for 60 seconds. And that's what I prefer once I get the hang of my specific character and I'm not dying to mechanics. Now switching to the end game setup. So this setup that I'm going to run is 6 light, 1 medium. I've tried 5 and 2 to take advantage of some of the medium armor passes, but I just couldn't sustain with that setup. So I'm going to go with Kelnar's Nightmare, single target focused monster helm, Bahase's Mania on the body, and Kinra's Wrath with a simple bar setup. The jewelry traits, we're going to go with Bloodthirsty with Infused Perfected Maelstrom on the back. That way our Unstable will proc that increased weapon and spell damage cliff, giving us a lot more spell damage even when we're on our front bar. Kinra's Wrath, I'm going with Precise and Fire. Charge is really good single target, but Precise trait on the front bar is your go-to that applies to all situations. Traits, obviously Divine, max magic glyphs on everything, and this is my setup, double fire staff. Okay, now let's switch and talk about the skills and the rotation and show you how this actually works. The first skill up is Deep Fissure, and this is our heavy hitter. Fissure will make or break you as a Magden PvE DPS. You need to cast this constantly to have good damage, with a 3-second delay, considering it 2 to 3 global cooldowns or abilities, and then recast it. If we look at our front bar, it means this: cast Fissure, then cast Infection, Orb, Cliff Racer, Fissure, then bar swap. Consider managing this your #1 priority due to the single target AoE damage and major breach debuff, and it has a 20-meter range, so it does have some range to it. Next up is Fetcher Infection. This is a 10-second damage over time that grants minor vulnerability. So it's going to increase the damage that you and everyone in your party uses. So this is a great skill that you can place on 1 or more targets due to that debuff and the damage over time. In combination with Fissure, you're going to lower resistances and increase damage for your group, maintaining these 2 abilities. Inner Light is up next, and this skill is slotted just to increase our overall DPS, pumping up our max magic. You can go with another animal companion ability such as Bird's Prey. I do not use that when I'm playing with coordinated PvE groups. The reason why is someone else might be running Kinra's Wrath, giving me minor berserk at all times, or my healer might be providing it for me. So it's a little bit more redundant, but play around with it, see what works best for you. Next up is our main spammable, Screaming Cliff Racer Bird. Yes, this is going to hit harder the further you are away. The trick with managing this ability is being close enough for Deep Fissure to land within 20-meter radius, but being far back as possible to increase our damage with this skill. Truthfully, you shouldn't be spamming this because Deep Fissure will outperform it. Consider 2 to 3 cast of Screaming Cliff Racer maximum before you need to cast Deep Fissure or another damage over time skill. Last ability up on our bar, and this is not exactly optimal with the Animal Companion skill line, giving us more damage for more Animal Companion abilities. What is optimal about this is it allows us to easily get that Kinra's continue to proc, meaning I don't put this on my back bar because that would give me 3 global cooldowns on my back bar to manage simultaneously, and it's too much. This is just more simple. Mystic Orb is basically your flex spot on this bar. It's going to give you massive AoE damage. People can use this energy both to sustain and do massive AoE damage. Even as it's been nerfed, it's still a really good, strong skill to use in group settings. Single target, however, I don't typically maintain this, but in group, absolutely. Hands down, it's great. Eternal Guardian is our animal companion ultimate. This ultimate is double barred, so it doesn't come on and off, and it's absolutely incredible damage. I managed to hit about 87,000 critical strikes, sub 20% health on bosses due to its attacking like an execute. So you're going to want to treat this like another ability, essentially. Since it costs 75 ultimate, it's always up. Keep in mind to recast the bear if it dies or whatnot. You'll also get some benefit because the bear will stun folks and it will also act as a decoy. So I prefer this, especially solo, over any other ultimate. Back bar, also an Inferno staff. We're going to go with our #1 ability, Channeled Acceleration. This is our pre-fight buff for minor force and extra speed. Consider this your flex spot on your back bar if you're running something like Medusas or Togmans, because those sets will give you the buff anyways. I usually run a group heal, elemental drain, or something that helps the team in this slot if that's the case. Also consider swapping in something like Barb Trap in this slot if you're going to play really melee focused or you're doing like a parse dummy. Blue Betty is up next. This is our source of major sorcery, increasing our spell damage. It's a great resource sustain tool. Like I talked about earlier, this is your ability that costs nothing, and you can spam cast this for a small amount of healing. So this is your primary heal when you're playing group or a solo, but you can also take off Channel Acceleration and add another one if you need a little bit more help. Harness Magicka is up next. This is a shield that absorbs damage for 6 seconds and helps you retain some magic when you're taking damage. Essentially, it's your #1 survivability tool, and I highly recommend for the average player to keep this on your bar at all times. This will prevent you from dying constantly, so you'll be able to cast this when you're taking damage or when you anticipate damage. Fire, something, someone's beating on you, it's going to save your life. If you're parsing or you have a dedicated group with healers and tanks, you can swap this to Inner Light for extra max magic and even more damage while you're on your back bar, but I pretty much always keep a shield because I don't like dying. Renter's Revenge is up. This is a 12-second damage over time, which applies the chilled status effect. This is great damage over time, and the chilled status effect increased chance is great, along with the stare. This is a 12-second damage over time, so you're going to cast longest dot to shortest. So I cast this prior to casting Unstable Wall of Elements, because it's a little bit longer. Unstable Wall of Elements, massive AoE explosion. We already talked about the gear set on our back bar. That's going to amplify our light and heavy attack damage. So it's your #1 priority to keep up on your back bar. You can also spam cast this for the explosion at the end and act like it's an AoE spammable, though it's not that good. Combine this with Winter's Revenge and Mystic Orb Deep Fissure, you're going to have massive AoE damage on this build. Eternal Guardian, you're still going to keep that barred so it doesn't come off. And now let's talk about the rotation. So in general, you're going to pre-buff and cast your buffs longest to shortest, meaning Channel Acceleration first, Netch, and then I usually start with an ultimate Winter's Revenge because it's 12 seconds, Unstable Wall of Elements bar swap. Now you're going to need a light attack weave in between each cast like a heartbeat. Da-da-da-da-da-da. So when you bar swap, first thing you're going to do is light attack. Get that Kinra's Wrath to start rocking and rolling. Fissure, light attack, infection, light attack, orb. Now you have one of two options. You're going to see where your fissure is at. Has it actually launched and taken off? If so, you're going to cast a fissure. If not, you're going to cast Screaming Cliff Racer, light attack, and then fissure. Usually at this point, something on my back bar has fallen off, like Unstable Wall of Elements is coming off cooldown. So my eyes are looking at my back bar timers, and that's what I'm doing and looking, do I need to go back to my back bar and cast something else? If you don't know what else to do, light attack and do a Screaming Cliff Racer. And almost always, fissure is going to be needed to be your cast. So we're going to assume I just cast a fissure. I'm going to light attack, go to my back bar, and this is where Unstable is going to fall off because it was cast for 10 seconds. Then it's going to be Winter's Grasp, and then usually a bar swap. During the action, I'm not typically going to maintain Channeled Acceleration or my Netch unless I need resource sustains. And now it's kind of the rinse and repeat. You're going to light attack as soon as you get back over there, fissure, light attack, infection, light attack, orb, and then racer and or a fissure. So maintaining Channel Acceleration in between the fights is really good, and then Netch as you need resources. And this is kind of your sequence. 2 to 3 global cooldowns, fissure. 2 to 3 global cooldowns, fissure. Back bar swap to cast 2 global cooldowns and maybe a third. But keep in mind, if you go for that third, it's pretty risky because you want to keep Kinra's proc. And this is where skill and practice comes down and reliably getting that really tight window of 3 global cooldowns before you get Kinra's rocking and rolling. So it will take some time. I'm not a master at it either. Now let's go over champion points and some of the miscellaneous things to make this build shine. We're going to go with the Warfare Blue Tree. Fighting Finesse, increasing your crit damage and crit healing done. So I'm taking this because I don't want to get to the crit damage cap, but just taking this champion point as a non-Khajiit, no problem. Deadly Aim, increasing your damage done with single target abilities. So this, along with Master of Arms, increase your damage done with direct damage abilities, really ramps up our damage from single targets like light attack, weaving, and some of the direct damage of pretty much all of our abilities. Now I do go with Wrathful Strikes and consider this your flexible option. Thaumaturge, some people will tell you to go with something else, but Wrathful Strikes is going to increase our spell damage from our damage abilities. Now we're going to go with the Red Fitness Tree. I'm going to go with Siphoning Spell, restoring magic per stage whenever you kill an enemy. This goes really handy with something like False Gods or Withered Hand. Boundless Vitality is going to increase our max health. This goes very well if you're trying to change your food and go with some parse food and you're really sitting at low 16, 17k health. Bastion, increase the effectiveness of your damage shields and damage shields against enemies by 3% per stage. This is going to go very well when using Harness Magic and Ice Heart if you struggle with survivability. Fortified is going to grant us armor, so this is just going to lower the amount of damage that people do to us passively. Very good slot. And then the Green Tree really isn't going to affect combat too much, so I'm going to go with Steed's Blessing, Rationer, Liquid Efficiency, and Treasure Hunter. For the racial choices, I consider Dark Elf a great choice. This character is actually a Breton because I primarily PvP on it, so I'm losing out on a lot of spell damage. The reason I like Dark Elf is it's going to give you max stats, whether it's magic or stam, and it's going to give you weapon and spell damage. So you can swap between stamina and magicka and still be one of the highest damage producing races out there. And Khajiit, people have been jumping off the bandwagon because of the critical damage cap. But if you are still a Khajiit, it's still a good option. You might just want to change your Mundus Stone. Speaking of Mundus Stones, I'm going to go with the Thief. Since I'm using Kinra's and Bahase's primarily on this build, I don't have a whole lot of crit rating like I would with Mother Sorrows and Medusas, so this is a great choice for me. Consumables, I'm going to go with the Clockwork Citrus Fillet. This is going to give me good recovery, good max stats across the board. You can go with the Parse Food Ghastly Eyeball if you want, and you'll have a little bit lower max health, but you'll have a lot of recovery. If you're using Bahase's, you just need to find out what food combination and resource sustain you need to be at between 50% to 20% of max magicka at all times. Potions, we're going to use just a spell power potion. So I do have Inner Light on my front bar and I do have the spell damage ability going. But the reason you use it is sometimes those abilities fall off and you want 100% uptime on crit chance and spell damage. So using these potions every 45 seconds, it's expensive, but the duration lasts 47.6 seconds if you have your medicinal use passive and alchemy maxed out. So essentially you get 100% uptime on 3 really important buffs. Well, gang, that is a walkthrough build. We covered a lot today, and I hope you got something out of this. I've given you a bunch of different options and things that you can use to be successful at the Magden. Magden, I don't care for in PvP at all, but I absolutely love it in PvE. It has a little bit different playstyle because you have that Deep Fissure Screaming Cliff Racer. It has good AoE, good survivability, good sustain, and the pet ultimate is actually kind of fun to use because when that thing hits an execute range, it absolutely melts. So let me know if you like this type of video, a slow walkthrough and going through the core mechanics. Hit that like, hit that subscribe if you want to see more of this content, and I'll keep cranking out these builds as Deadlands has really changed a lot of things in ESO Update 32. Thanks for watching.